a series of discussion papers which have been set aside for two reasons. This volume, you may have seen it out there on the tables. We suggest you acquire a copy. Unfortunately, you have to pay for them. We couldn't afford to provide them in any other way. They serve two functions. We have received a number of papers whose authors couldn't be here. And one way we can deal with them is by at least noting their existence and perhaps drawing some of the highlights from them and discussing them. And the other purpose of the discussion sessions is to give more of an opportunity to the participants to the conference to comment on matters of interest to them, and also to round off the subject matter which the conference contemplates at some point or other. We have only so many topics that are presented by researchers who happen to be working on certain things. There's always a lot of gaps in between that no one happens to have submitted a paper on. So there you'll find a collection of other things which were not prepared specifically for this conference, but which might stimulate discussion on a worthwhile topic. So please be a little tolerant on the stuff you find there. That is its purpose. Okay? I don't think we'll discuss any of, well, perhaps we'll discuss, sorry, this is a little bit flexible at the moment. We've invited a number of the speakers here to read some of these papers and become fairly familiar with what the authors have written in order to assist discussion. Some of the briefer ones I think can be read, and I believe there's enough time for me to read a 4-page report. I would like to read to you the paper submitted by Claire Noble of Tully. Now, that is the second paper in this collection on page 29 if you have the booklet. Incidentally, the four submitted papers, I might as well point them out to you. We've obtained a paper from Paul Norman of the Victorian UFO Research Society. That's quite a large one of almost 30 pages. A brief paper from Claire Noble from Tully. Another paper from Judith McGee, also of the Victorian UFO Research Society, entitled The Close Encounter of Maureen Puddy, which I suspect many of you will find quite interesting. A paper from Paul White, who later, through other commitments, withdrew from presenting it himself, UFOs, the Image in the Mirror. And a paper from Barry Taylor of Grafton, excuse me, I'm getting these two a little confused. That was prepared in quite a hurry in the last few days before the conference when he found out about it. The other papers are discussion papers, mostly collected and mostly written by myself. I hope we'll have time to make some discussion of the invisibility thing, because we do seem to have a lot of information, both from the Philadelphia experiment and other sources, that make this an important issue in UFO research. I hope too we'll discuss a little channeled information. In recent years, an enormous amount of information claiming to be pertinent to the subject of UFOs has come from people who are called in the jargon of this subject channels. I believe it's fair to say that they consider themselves to be receiving the information mentally and then to speak it to the rest of us. They're acting as a kind of a telephone line for us. Well, is such information significant, or should we be looking at it in the context of UFO research or not? Well, that paper is intended, was actually written originally to be published in our publication at the time of Lisa Royal's arrival. I hope to get some informed discussion going then, but it never got published, and perhaps it'll stimulate some discussion in this conference. I do believe too that at some future conference, the methods used by Bruce Cassidy in determining his predictions should receive some kind of scrutiny too, because to my knowledge they've never been seriously and properly dealt with, or even attempted to be dealt with in a gathering such as this one. Anyway, I won't refer to the others. I'm merely sort of trying to familiarise yourself with the contents of this booklet, and I trust you'll get hold of your copy, because we'll have plenty of time tomorrow too to discuss some of these aspects. I'll now read Claire Noble's paper, which she has entitled Tully the Never-Ending Saga, Never-Ending UFO Saga. In the back of her paper, she stuck onto page 4 some starting data that may be of interest to you. Claire has been active in UFO research since the 1960s. There used to be a group, the Voluntary Association, operative in Tully for a number of years, and Claire is one of the surviving committee members of that group, and she just kept going on her own. She's collected about 730 sightings reports from the Tully area in that period, and she has evidence of 86 ground markings from that area as well. I and a colleague interviewed Claire Noble in 1992, and at that time she described too an encounter, a bedroom encounter with an entity that she had had in the 60s, which she had, to my knowledge, hadn't spoken about publicly and cautioned us not to publicise too much. But in this paper she makes reference to an entity which I believe is probably related to or similar to that one, so I feel free to tell you this. I'll read the paper now. I'm sorry I cannot be with you all at on this important occasion. However, I agreed to write an article about the Tully UFO scene so as Martin could speak about it at the same time as his national conference. I think most ufologists have heard about the Tully UFO story, some of it at least, but most of it has not been yet written or published. Over the past 30 years, I have managed to get different articles printed in Australia and overseas, but as much as I have wanted to write a book and get it all down in print, I've just found it impossible to get out from under, so to speak, as the UFO sightings never ever stop here. Last count 730, with new ones coming in continually, and older ones finally spoken out. Then too, interested UFO and New Age people are always turning up, so you can see I'm not writing about that, I'm talking about it all. Tully has been a hotspot of UFO activity since 1965. I wish to correct that, since 1940s. But I'll just go on and not upset the flow of her article. And of course, the local Aboriginals tell about their light, Chikabana, and craft sightings in their legends of back in time. In 67-68, we pronounced Tully to be the UFO capital of Australia. I guess they wanted a tourist tag too, don't they? In 1965, two of my friends, my nephew and myself, had a great sighting of two big bright, low-flying lights coming over just above us, outside our home, before veering off easterly to land on a hilltop 1.5 kilometers away. Here they stayed and operated for 3.5 hours, a long time sighting. It was all a great exciting happening. Then, later when we had our torch and car lights answered in early 1966, we went out into the bush to make contact, and so welcome our cosmic visitors. I can say here that contact was made. It was all very, very exciting, wonderful time, and the adrenaline was running high. Then soon after, on the 19th of January 66, a young Tully man saw a flying saucer craft, a solid metallic blue-grey colour, rise out of the Horseshoe Lagoon to a height of approximately 60 feet. Then it backed off and finally shot off at a tremendous speed. This is the Tanisi landing, Tanisi incident. All this happening within 25 yards in front of him. This, of course, was worldwide news, mainly because a UFO craft was seen so close on the ground level within 25 yards, and then a wonderfully clear 30-foot marking left behind as positive evidence. Actually, when this man walked over to the lagoon, the uplifted reeds were still swirling in a clockwise mass. Then too, very good photos were taken of the nest, and taken of the nest was extra proof of the craft sighting happening. Over the years since this sighting, more UFO markings came into the small 1-acre lagoon, in all making a total of 54 markings. Then soon after, the other farmers spoke up about markings on their lagoons, and so on. In all 6 known lagoons were done over making a higher tally. Excuse the expression, I don't know if that's quite right. And so in all 6 known lagoons were done over making a higher tally. That's how she wrote it. Soon after, more markings showed up in the cane farms, in areas close around the town, and so making an overall total of 86 known sightings. I must say also that other farmers have seen crafts taking off from their land, and it has been reported to me that beings have been seen here and in other northern town areas. The whirring noise of some low-flying crafts have been reported, and I myself have experienced the melodious tone of crafts over my home during the early morning hours. Also, we have heard the noises in the ground, as has been reported in other parts of our planet. As of now, we have not had the fantastic symbolic type crop circle markings as seen in England, but a few years back I saw a double ring circle marking on the Atherton tableland, and some raven shoe men, 6 in all, rang me to tell their story of finding a 6 concentric ring circle in the Herbert River George area. Our crafts have seen here have been of all shapes: circular, cone, big and small, cigar, spinning tops, sombrero, train-shaped, square carriage lights, and like seeing a train in the sky, and rectangular, also flotillas of high-flying craft. I think I'll ask you to excuse our construction, but I hope you can extract the meaning of what's saying. So many of the smaller remotely controlled electronic eye registering discs have been seen at night, also the green tennis ball-sized light. A big issue is the number of daytime craft sightings passing over some stationary for a time. Also, a number of mother crafts have been seen releasing their smaller baby discs. Beam lights have also been seen all over the town. And when she says beam lights, I think she means it in the context of the Billy Mayer beam lights, those shapes. An area as if mapping out all detail. There has been talk of a crashed saucer in a country area here, which they say was quickly taken away. I do not know if this is correct, but I definitely have heard of 3 near crashes in the 60s and the 70s. If I may leave her report here for a moment, I've received from a man in Brisbane an independent account of this, which goes along the lines that something crashed on a property near Tully. The property was purchased by the authorities. A shed was built over the crashed object. The previous owners left the area, never explained the reasons for their moving on, and I presume in due course the shed and the crashed object disappeared. This story came originally from the publisher of the local Tully newspaper, who told it to the man who then told it to me. So far I've been unable to obtain much in the way of corroboration of this particular claim. Continuing. The feet or instrument markings found on the ground at the Horseshoe Lagoon and on a property close to town were the same type markings as found in the Cornwall and Devon counties in the late 1800s. Also, some other or different type of markings found nearby matched up to ones found in the USA. I sent a copy of the markings over to a top ufologist in New York, USA, and he verified the same. Also, near to that time, I was so browned off from seeing so much activity here that I sent off a 60-page report to Dr. Alan Hynek. Amazingly, even here in this area, so many people are still asleep to it all. Not quite sure what she meant, but I get the drift of the feeling, I think. A very big issue here was the taking of a movie film in 1968 of a craft, or crafts, whatever, on Horseshoe Lagoon, all within a few yards away. The film was not returned from the photographic developer in the south. That relates to an incident in which our association was involved, in which an automatic camera was set off and footage was exposed. The film was sent to Kodak in Melbourne. Kodak then later claimed that there was no film in the package that was sent to them, and we never got back any images of any parts of that film. And then she goes on with other things, which I think I'll stop here. I accept to sort of comment on this. Claire, I believe, has had an encounter. I don't know too much about it, but I suspect the amount of communication that took place, it wasn't terribly great. Rather similar to the abduction encounters, in which the amount of communication is relatively small too. And since in the past few years, Claire has, in my opinion, paid all too much attention to channeled information and claims about great catastrophes and mass landings and so on. Now, I don't wish to say such things can't happen, but I certainly would suggest that they have to be examined carefully. In her case, she's now convinced that 15 billion UFOs are going to land and 300 million ETs are going to walk around in our streets in the near future. It's a big claim that needs to be backed up as more than just an idea, and this is why I don't wish to read the rest of the report, but commit it to your attention if you read it for yourself, because we're not really geared up to discuss that very much at the moment. But perhaps later on someone can bring it up in discussion. I don't wish to dissuade discussion on this subject. Well, there's Claire's report. There's something very similar that happened to Richard Tambling, a man who wrote a book on flying saucers many years ago, in which he described how, while he was stationed in Hong Kong, he saw a disc coming from mainland China into the Hong Kong area. The disc split into two, and the two flew off. The object split into two, the two flew off. They passed close enough to him for him to be able to identify them as identical, so far as he could tell, to the Adamski photographs of the disc that was published in the 1950s. This happened in the late 50s or early 60s in Hong Kong. Now, Richard Tambling lives on the Sunshine Coast. He's fairly old, and although I invited him to come to this conference, he felt that his health fluctuated too much for him to be able to commit himself. But on the Sunshine Coast, at a meeting some months ago, he said how over the course of his life he'd had about 83 sightings. And in recent years, in the last decade or two, he started communicating with some entity too. He gives it a name which I can't remember to give to you. And he's gone in the same direction, entering some kind of communication relationship with what he believes to be an extraterrestrial, and wishing to disseminate the message and information given. Now, in nuts and bolts UFO research, we've tended to ignore this a great deal. This has been going on since the 50s, but it's not been very much proceeded in nuts and bolts UFO research. Somehow we're going to have to grapple it, because in relation to this sort of thing, we're in the same position as mainstream society and mainstream science, who won't touch the whole UFO subject too. We're really sort of playing the same kind of game, and we've often dismissed these things and never properly examined them. I commend discussion along those lines to this conference, and that's what I'd like to leave Claire's paper.
Questions. We want to try to make a discussion out of this or anything else. So before we close this session for today, if you do have any questions about anything really, or comments or anything like that, please, now's the time. We've made sure we've left some time for questioning. We've been pushing all day, so now's an opportunity for you to have your say. The gentleman right here.
In the case of Richard Tambling, he didn't say how the relationship with his ET was set up. He didn't say. It's Claire Noble who had an encounter in her bedroom with an entity. Yes. The lady's name is Claire Noble. The lady's name is Claire Noble. She lives and works in Tully. And I believe it may be the same entity that she refers to by name here somewhere.
Didn't you say they had one of the books out the front?
I beg your pardon?
You say that she's got a book out the front?
No, Claire has no book here.
Right.
She's been meaning to write a book for many years. The lady who's got a book out here is Kelly Cahill. Her encounter happened in Victoria in 1993, I think, 93 or 94, August 8. She's here personally, and she'll be speaking tomorrow. I wouldn't want the two cases to be confused.
So what's the last name?
Kelly Cahill, C-A-H-I-L-L.
She's got a book published.
Her book is published, it's called Encounters.
Encounters.
Yes, it's out on the tables there. It's a blue colour book with 3 entities on the front cover.
Thank you.
What you're saying is that we should be starting to look at the contactees and the channelers type information in the UFORQ. Is that correct?
That is what I'm suggesting, yes.
Okay. All right. I said earlier that the paper that I was presenting, that we need to have an overview of the whole phenomenon. We've been looking at the UFO data for the last 50 years on a nuts and bolts basis. As a consequence of that research, we have some inroads, but as Valley says, we only can explain 50% of the observations or of the information that we've got. The other 50% doesn't support the evidence, or is not supportable. So it means we're going to have to widen our spheres of interest and start looking at contactees and channelers to provide us with information. The problem with using contactees and channelers is that what methodology, what structures or outlines do you use that you just don't take every single thing that they say for granted?
That's the first issue, isn't it? How do you measure them for accuracy? Okay? How do you determine whether what they're saying is a product of an imagination or a mind, and where has it got a real origin from? I'm not commending channeling as a valid source of information, but there are a lot of people who are channeling, and a large number of people amongst the public who take it seriously. Even a lady who's been looking at UFOs for 30 years, right? And there's many of them. And we, to my knowledge, in the UFO research field, have not developed tools for being able to say either that a particular channeler is fairly accurate or why they're not accurate. You know, this is what I'm looking at.
To carry on with that, a lot of the information, particularly with contactees, is you're not getting the information unfiltered. You're getting the biases of the individual who's giving you the information. So if an alien tells a contactee there's going to be bomb dropped, right? The message that we get, there's going to be bomb dropped and we should do something about it because it's going to hurt Earth.
Yes.
Now we don't know which part of that was told by the alien or which part of it was an interpretation by the contactee to say, oh, the best thing here would be not to hurt Earth. Okay?
Yes.
Now the problem is breaking that down into bits.
And getting the original message back out and sorting out the noise. Now, it's not just the channelers who got this problem. Every time we make a nuts and bolts interpretation of something, we bring to it the preconceptions of the scientific mentality, whether or not we know it, which includes a nature of what the universe is like and what it is and what it can't be and all the rest of it. And one of the reasons I suspect we've made so little progress along the nuts and bolts road to understanding this phenomenon is because most of these preconceptions are wrong anyway. Or at least they're no use when you try to tackle the UFO subject. So, you know, channelers aren't the only ones who've got this problem. We all bring our preconceptions to the thing.
I believe that ufologists are chaos theory scientists. Right? We're not looking at the scientific method anymore. The scientific method doesn't work. Right? But he was looking at metal logic. In other words, a relationship thing, myths and ideas. Okay, and I think that's the way we should starting to go.
I heard one of the speakers today something which I thought was really spot on thing to me, and I believe that speaker was saying something along the lines, we have to pursue every avenue of knowledge that is available to us and find a more holistic way of dealing with the UFO phenomenon. Because the answer lies beyond the fringes of our present knowledge. We have to go to the very fringes of our knowledge, then take a step even further. And maybe then a picture that works, okay, I won't say it's true, but works, helps us to understand, maybe then it'll emerge. Certainly nothing less has succeeded so far as I see it.
Yeah, I noticed when Colin Phillips was talking about this primary water, and I got the impression, I don't know whether I'm right or not, but that the reaction of the audience was, largely one of complete disbelief. When he was saying, the primary water is manufactured in the earth. In other words, many people would say, well, what on earth evidence have you got for this? Or, this is completely beyond our experience. You get into this sort of field when you start talking about these things. It's got to be, whatever you're discussing, it's got to be within reason. If you throw reason out the window, then I think, what else have you got?
Well, yes,
I think that's wrong, because I think we're mature enough now to fully understand and appreciate what technology is offering. That's the same rationale behind someone looking at a box that's producing sound totally not connected to, I'm talking about radio, of course. So that's the same analogy if you like. We don't, because we don't understand how water is produced from a rock, we can't dismiss it out of hand.
Well, I think this illustrates the point very well. To persons like myself and Peter, who've been brought up in the academic environment, what Colin Phillips said was contravention of certain so-called fundamental laws of nature. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. Matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. What Colin was saying was just coming into creation. That's what he seemed to be saying.
I don't think so.
Well, the point is, that's how we heard it. The general audience hasn't been brought up on that principle. It doesn't even tickle them. We sort of stand back and say, hang on a minute.
But he said it was produced
it doesn't
from
worry
air.
them.
He said it was produced from air. Contact with air.
Well, that's transmutation, and then we've got exactly the same problem with that one too.
Well, but it could have been a catalytic reaction. It could have been, let's face it, water is simply H2O.
That's right. Well, you told us where the oxygen came from, but where did the hydrogen come from?
Exactly. Well,
Right? So the point is, these raised these questions in our mind because we had certain sort of training. And that doesn't mean we're more right in our judgment of it, but the general public isn't even worried by things like that because they haven't been trained to pick up on these nuances. So you can get people making horrendous claims which really appall trained scientists, and the public isn't too worried about it. Now, I think we should learn to tolerate these challenges to our training. I've tried it over the years not to react and say, hang on, that's just out of the question. Because I think the truth is somewhere in between the two of us. And we've both got to get towards the truth. No one's arguing the fact that I'm wrong now and he's wrong now, because we're both too far away from the truth anyway. We're wasting our time. We've got to go somewhere.
It's like when you're thinking about the whole of existence of everything that's around us, the whole concept of life and everything else. I always sort of think to myself that when you're talking about physical things and spiritual things and our minds and how you've got to open your mind up to all these various different aspects of the universe and life around us, is that I sometimes think that maybe we look at physical things and the things that are around us in a physical way without using our spiritual eyes or our minds and expanding our minds and accepting that what we see is not really what we see, that it might be something totally different, and that we've got to come to the point where we can accept the fact that some of these things which are happening around us are actually happening, although we're not actually being able to see it happening because we're looking at it with a physical or a materialistic way in our mind. Do you think that people should expand their minds more and accept that things that are happening around us are something so different that we should open our minds and try and become more spiritual in our concept of what's going on, rather than looking at everything in a more physical way, like a scientific way? Like when you talk about something coming from rock, you feel that it's impossible for it to happen. But don't you think that there might be things in the universe that can make these things happen, which we have no knowledge of at the moment? So we've got to expand our minds and start thinking to ourselves, well, maybe it's just a reaction of drilling into the rock, the air and the oxygen and the things that are mixing up around in that specific piece of rock is changing the molecular structure of it and turning it into steam, which creates water which comes out of the rock. I mean, there's various things that can happen like that which are very unexplainable, and I just feel that people need a little bit more expanding their mind out and looking at things in a different way.
I don't think anyone would disagree with you that we need to open our minds more.
We're all opening our minds out now about the way the world is and the way that things are changing and the way that we're treating the world, you know, and it's a living thing, whereas you said that to people some years ago and they laughed, you know, they'd say, no, Earth is Earth, it's not living, but I mean,
if you said it was out, you've got to believe it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if everything was created spiritually, I mean, maybe we could see it spiritually if we were able to open our minds to a more spiritual level rather than being on a physical plane or level.
As you spoke, I thought I understood what you were saying to us, which I thought was this, that here we are having quite diverse points of view or the way we understand the universe around us, needing to find a way in which we can move together and open our minds in a methodical and orderly fashion into new vistas that previously weren't part of our understanding and experience. And to give you a sort of mundane example, in the horse and buggy days, you went from point A to point D in a certain way. In the jet plane days, you make the same journey much faster. But the entire process is just as orderly and just as methodical and just as structured as in the old days. So our new conception will be logical and sensible in some way. It won't be just a meaningless, irrational jumble of things. And our problem is, I think, to find a way to make progress, this progress together, so that the people who have to understand each step of the way are satisfied, and that's the technicians and the scientists. And the people who are happy to take the big leaps can get what they want to, if I can put it right.
We've been to the moon, and we've got satellites, space centres, one thing and another, warmer up, Cape Canaveral, you know. Why is it when they've been up there circling the Earth, they haven't seen a UFO?
Someone else comment.
I mean, I have seen something myself, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Why is it that we haven't been able to pick up when we get the news around the world, everything, you know, everything is...
Go no further, we know what you're saying. In fact, I think that of all the space missions, it's very few the space missions that have not seen UFOs. Most have reported UFOs. In fact, some astronauts on their retirement have virtually...
talk about.
No, you see, when they're up in space and we're watching it on television, Roger, Houston, we hear all that great. But sometimes we don't really hear what they say on a different channel. See, they're not going to let the public hear everything that goes on up there, of course. Right, things like that, it'll slip. Sometimes a UFO, we have a bogey on the left or something like that, then after that they don't talk about it anymore. They switch to a different channel. We don't pick those messages up anymore. And in fact, there's many photographs taken from the Apollo missions that show objects quite brazenly just crossing the path of our Apollo rockets.
There's been an odd pilot that no one believes in, do they?
No, well see, what happens is if you're a pilot, say even just a domestic commercial pilot, you're flying along, you come down and you report, oh, by the way, I saw these funny lights and I saw this and I saw that. And they're thinking, okay, we might just ground you because you've got 400 people on board and you're reporting funny lights and you're taking evasive action. Maybe you should spend a couple of weeks at the Bahamas, blah, blah. You see what the situation that they're in.
Well, the Saturday night, a friend of mine, I was seeing her off out on the driveway. We happened to see two unusual objects going over from the northwest, heading Chermside way, and one behind. And they were like that. with lights around, orange lights. No abrupt nose, but like that. And there was no one around. I went and knocked up one neighbour and dragged him out. He was asleep, but his teenage children came, and we watched it out of sight. Next day at my club, I happened to mention it, and somebody had seen it at Chermside, but she was too afraid to go out on the balcony and have a good look. I would have.
So would I live in Chermside.
And when I mentioned it to my daughter, the first thing she says to me, "What did you and Gladys have to drink?"
There you go. There you go. Now,
that is the only reason why I'm here. I want to know.
You want to know. Now, if I can explain that, similar to a story another way. I was speaking to someone outside there earlier this morning, and he saw a craft in broad daylight, and he saw two crafts. One met up with the other one. It was a disc shape. The sun was shining off it, and he was so excited he didn't know what to do. He was calling dogs over. He was calling everybody. He called these two guys over. "Look at this, a UFO." Then, you know what they said? "Oh yeah. By the way, you watching the football tonight?" Yeah, I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, I know.
You know, if they land on your front yard, some people say, "Oh, look, a UFO." Other people say, "I hope the grass doesn't die." We come across that very often. Some people just, I don't know, you just come to where I work.
I didn't like to write in and describe it. I contacted the Weather Bureau. That's how I come to be here. It went from one thing to another.
That's right.
But I'm just a silly little old lady,
No.
you know?
No, you're not. But if everyone has your attitude and you phone up, see what's happening now. If we want to report something about a UFO to the media, they'll be here like that. Everything's UFO-ish at the moment. There's a movie coming out. There's life on Mars. There's conferences happening. If they get enough people writing or phoning them up, it becomes a news story. And what happens then? Other people see, "Hey, that happened to me too. Quick, ring up that TV channel," and it just goes on and on and on. But apathy probably is our biggest problem. People just don't care because it doesn't affect either their wallet or it doesn't affect some trivial material thing. They think nothing of it. So what if there's life on other planets? Big deal. That's what they say.
It won't pay the rent.
I've been in lots of places. I've been to Cape Canaveral, I've seen what they do. I've been to Woomera, the Warrabungles, parks. I've seen them all. And I want to know why, when they're up there, they don't see something coming this way.
I think they do. There is the one I tell you about.
They don't want to scare us ordinary folk. Thank you.
Thank you for asking the question. We've been asking it for a long time too. You're in good company here.
We just had another little input here. When I say we don't want to throw reason out of the window, I think that there's got to be a bit of a distinction here between, say, adhering to maybe what might be called the scientific method, in other words, the method which scientists might adopt to look at the UFO phenomena, and adopting what I would call a reasonable attitude towards it. In other words, if, say, you're looking at the abduction phenomena and you're trying to explain it, well, okay, you may say, well, you're not going to explain it scientifically, which I would tend to agree with you. You're probably not adopting the scientific method as it's currently practiced. But on the other hand, you may seek to explain it. But that's got to be within the bounds of reason. I mean, so you can't just explain it by saying, well, maybe like we do Weeks for breakfast or something like that. You've got to have some rational method of tackling these questions, even if it's not a scientific one within the current program. That was the point I was trying to make.
Well, for my part, I fully agree with you. And while it's not always possible to follow the scientific method in its accepted sense in UFO research, because we can't make a laboratory process out of it, we can follow the spirit of the scientific method, which is put first, always looking for things that work, ideas that work, concepts that work, that allow us to take the next step in understanding. You see, in the scientific method, as it really should be, I believe, there is no such thing as truth. All you discover is an idea which seems to describe nature better than the one you had before. It's not the final answer. 50 years or 10 years from now, somebody else will come along with another idea. Yours will be scrapped, and eventually that one will be scrapped. It's a process. It's like walking. You stand on one leg and you put your foot out to the next one. The ideas or the concepts or the theories in science are us putting our mental feet down so we can lift the other one and take it forward. It's when we forget this that in fact that our theories are not truths, just things that seem to work, and get hung up on ideas like the laws of nature. I'm sure nature maybe has laws, but what we call the laws of nature are just our ideas that happen to work at the moment. We'll eventually make discoveries that can no longer be described by our so-called laws of nature, and we scrap them. Well, does nature isn't the same, isn't different then? It's our concepts that have changed. You see, we have words and ideas that lock both our feet down and we stop walking. What I mean by the spirit of scientific research, or the spirit of the scientific process, is this idea that you use one idea to help you get to a better idea, which then helps you get to a better idea. You don't talk about truths and falsehood because those are absolutes. We are on a journey. We're not at the destination yet. And I think you can do that in UFO research as well as you can do it in the conventional sciences. I would never want to put down the scientific method or belittle the scientific tools that help us to do this. But I think we'll have to find more creative ways of using those methods and tools than the way it's been convenient to do in the fields of science as they currently apply. And if you study the history of science and what the men and women have written who've contributed greatly to the progress of science, they are much more flexible in their application of the scientific methods than the people who are trained in those ideas and are not on the cutting edge of progress. You know, they tend to be far more anchored in concrete than the people who have actually achieved a piece of progress, because they went through the process of rejecting what they learned and replacing it with something else. And in UFO research, that's what you're doing every day, because we haven't got anywhere near the answer yet. I don't think that contradicts the scientific method or the scientific process, but it's a more open-minded way of dealing with it.
No, that's right. So if you take, people talk about Gaia, the principle that the Earth is maybe an entity in some way. It is an idea. It's an idea. You've got to, once you put forward that idea and you say, well, okay, maybe there's something in this. It certainly doesn't have any credence within the current scientific paradigms. It is nevertheless an idea, and once you come up with that idea, then you reach certain conclusions from that. And if the certain conclusions you reach don't seem to match, what is actually happening, then you can say, well, the idea is no flipping good, let's check it out. But you can't say, okay, well, it doesn't match reality in any way whatsoever, and therefore we're going to keep it.
Yeah, that's when beliefs get confused with what things that work, isn't it? When the ideology gets in the way of progress, as they say.
Somebody said there was going to be some ideas about invisibility or something.
I didn't think that was going to be dealt with today. Would you very strongly prefer it to be dealt with today?
Oh no, I'm just.
It will come up.
You said it was going to come up. Oh, okay.
We will. This is the first of our discussion sessions. We have 2 more to come.
In the second part, where's a report there that you didn't want to deal with, that dealt with channeling information. I tend to agree with what you say. I'm a bit sceptical of information that's supposedly channeled because you think, well, it's someone's imaginative mind. I don't know whether he got her information from the same source, but this report outside from the Brisbane Planetary Advocate Group, they stipulate the same thing that she had in her report. The thing that I'm still sceptical, but the thing that I appreciate about it is that at least they've narrowed it down to a date. I mean, they're laying their reputation on the line. They're saying between the 23rd of September and the beginning of December that there is this 15 million craft that's going to land here. In a way, it reminds me of with the religious groups at the beginning of the century who said that the second coming was going to be on a certain date, and they all waved at Sydney Heads, and it didn't occur, then they put their date back a little bit further. Eventually they lost total credibility altogether. At least at least I think, as much as I'm still sceptical, at least I think I'm skeptical. I think I like this because I'm going to be able to stand there and say, what about this date? It's come and gone and it hasn't even happened yet. Yeah.
Well, this is one of the mysteries about it. I mean, I've conversed with Claire over the years for many years, and about a year ago, I think June 20th or something was a big day, the crunch was going to come. She told me that in several telephone conversations. Well, the date came and went, and now she's got another one.
Was that
Now, I don't wish to convey the idea that she's not a competent UFO researcher. She does not feel the facts, okay? She'll tell it as it comes. Obviously, she would colour it according to her interpretation where she interprets it. I don't have any question of that. I don't wish to diminish the significance of her UFO research work. I can't quite understand how she can so blithely walk over those dates which she was so convinced of when she spoke to me then, and now wants me to believe another day without ever explaining to me why the first one can be neglected. And that's why I didn't read this stuff out to you.
I think along the very same lines as you do. I will never ridicule anyone for their ideas, but when they give a date, I have respect for them, because at least they put the whole reputation on the line. And I started collecting dates at home. And believe me, I've got a fair list of dates that have already passed. And so I think that, see, what ufologists want, they want to know when a UFO is going to appear and communicate with them. That's what most people would probably most want. Now with channelers, we have that in one little package. We've got direct communication, or if you can call it direct communication, and a where and a when and everything. And it never eventuates. So that's why I think they lose credibility like that. You can have an open mind. But I heard a saying the other day, I think it goes along with that gentleman was saying, if you open your mind too much, your brain can fall out. And I think after thinking about it, I think I know what they meant by that. But I've got someone very close to me that has predicted a few things. And I said, great, that's good, give me the date. We've got the dates worked out. I said, right, we'll just sit around and work on this. But most people that would predict the end of the world or something still have money invested in long-term accounts. Okay? A lot of magazines that profit, can see the world coming to an end, are still trying to increase their circulation. And it confuses me a little bit. You know, first you're saying the world's going to end, and then you're out pushing new avenues to increase your circulation. What's the point? You know, just to tell everyone, spread the information that the world will end, so everyone will know beforehand. I mean, yeah.
The same thing happened back when the Earth turned 1,000. I mean, I don't know if you've read about it. At the end of the first millennium, everyone was out, and it was then fashionable that you wouldn't get to heaven if you were actually a rich man. A poor man was sort of more virtuous. So everyone was giving everything away, and at the end of 31st of January 999, whatever it was, everyone was giving everything away. And then the next day they're back there trying to get their stuff back off it. You know? So I'm wondering whether the same sort of thing isn't
we tend to like round numbers. I mean, everyone knows something's going to happen in the year 2000. If the world's going to end, it'll end then. If something's going to happen, the world changes, it'll happen then. Nice round numbers, I think. But if someone can come to me personally and say, sit down with me and say, look, this has happened, I predict this and this is going to happen, my views will change immediately. But up until now, I've heard many people come up with dates and times and predictions that have just not eventuated. Okay.
I was just going to say, what on earth is the purpose of this kind of information? I mean, on the end day plus one, they can turn around and say to you, I told you so. So what? You can't do anything with the information anyway. Yes. It's completely useless, brainless, idiotic information. Yes. Why the obsession with it? I mean, I have a real objection to quite a lot of the channel information. You can have all these people in a room and something's being channeled and I say, hey, this is white. One goes, yeah. And the next thing says, hey, it's black. Yeah. What's the benefit? The overall input of information is nothing. Not even grey. It's just nothing. Now, if you're looking for information, I mean, okay, I agree with Martin that we do have to have some kind of criteria for assessing this information. But the point is, at what point, you know, sometimes you find with these things there's a certain amount of information that does somehow get through all that net. I often think that a lot of the effort is simply not worth it because there's so much stuff out there to be assessed by UFO investigators that, you know, suddenly if we end up taking on this stuff, we're sort of spending so many hours, say effectively say 100 hours, of which only 1 or 2 hours are going to produce anything kind of useful or meaningful. It's kind of, you know, it affects my sense of efficiency. You know, there's not enough of us to go around, damn, we're going to do this as well and sort these people out. We're going to keep on losing.
And the comment on the last headline was, that could be where the breakthrough is. That could be where they found the penicillin, that could be where they found, you know, lots of things. And I think that unless we are prepared to invest like that, as I think the gentleman's saying, we're just going to keep looking at the same thing we have for the last 40 years. I think we've got to have a little bit of breakthrough.
Well, I have reports and accounts of stories of the end of the world that go back to the 1950s. I mean, you know, just in Australia and New Zealand, there's an awful lot of them. Every couple of months, there's another sect, for example, in Sydney that locks itself up in a house somewhere because they believe the world's going to end at 10 o'clock that evening or midnight or something like that. And it doesn't happen. There was a case, I think, in Sydney about 18 months ago where one particular end of the world movement did this, and word sort of leaked out to the media. So sort of at about 9 o'clock, all the media started crowding around this house, and everyone was going to this house and rushing from their cars inside and slamming the door. And then sort of, you know, they just kept the cameras trained on all these wonderful people out there. I think there's the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence were there having a wonderful time. It's a group of gay male nuns sort of in Sydney who sort of do little festivals like this. There's some Christian fundamentalists there as well, sort of flogging off Bibles and stuff. After midnight, there's nothing happened. There's a big countdown. After midnight, nothing happened. 1 o'clock, nothing happened. People still waiting. About 2 o'clock, a couple of people came out, rushed over to their cars, got in and drove away. And I think about 10 hours later, the last person sort of kind of left. And you know, it really achieved absolutely nothing. Now, okay, there's a very good publication called When Prophecy Fails. It's been out for about 30-odd years. It goes on exactly about this phenomenon. In a couple of cases, studies it looks at in the United States. And nothing has happened in those 30 or so years since it was published. You know, I think millennial prophecies are really a waste of time. Okay, so
concentrate on just that, though. I think that what the gentleman was saying was that we need to think about the fact that we can apply some scientific methodology to looking at associated issues that maybe we haven't looked at with regard to UFOs. And I'm not talking about just channeling, it could be other things. Because if we just keep looking at the science, we're not going to get much further.
There is another common myth that a lot of people look at, and I've been looking at this as well, and that is that UFOs and this New Age movement and that is in fact what started the environmental movement. Now that is complete and utter rubbish, because I can remember many cases in the past where, quite frankly, the New Age people didn't give a stuff about dolphins and all this sort of thing. This is very much a fashion thing. My parents ran an organisation in New Zealand a good number of years ago. In the early 1960s, there was a proposal by the government to build a dam in a lake called Lake Manapuri, a very beautiful part of the country. It's very similar, in fact, to what Lake Pedder was here in Tasmania. Now, they then had about 380 people on in their subscription. They actually sort of put out their publication. Some people said, look, hey, this is a great change to this place. How about we get a petition up? They put out a petition, they sent out 380-odd copies to all their readers and say, look, this is a petition to save Lake Manapuri. They sent out 380 copies, they got one back with one signature on it. Now, a lot of these New Age things are going around nowadays, mind, body, spirit festivals and things like that. People are saying things like, hey, you know, hey, well, we invented the environment. That's rubbish. The environment is something that's come on very recently. New Age people don't really invent anything. They often commercialise it. They often give it a certain amount of, they perhaps add a certain amount of resonance, but they often do not initiate what you might call new worthwhile movements of themselves.
If I may pick up on this lady's comment on another angle, one of the things that I think in UFO research we should address is because it has implications possibly for for this very subject. For example, is in this attitude that I think was more prevalent in the United States than here. You know, this idea that UFOs are going to come en masse, and take us all away out of this messy, dirty, rotten old world into a better world. You know, the free trip, the free lunch type of idea. Now, when it sort of came to me, I felt there was something sinister about it too. If you imagine just for a moment that there was a kind of competition for this planet, that some other civilization would rather like to have it too, where would the person stand who was happy to take a ride and leave it all? Would they still have much of a claim to this planet? See what I mean? Are we being manipulated into certain games where it's rather like a survey? How badly do you want this world? Can we lever you out of it? Are you happy just to say, oh, this is the rotten place, oh, I've had this here, take me somewhere else? Of course, you think you're going to be taken to a wonderful world, but what you are doing is giving up on this one. Right? I think sometimes there are little games that work underneath it all which are important and may have a repercussion somehow with the centre of our subject, which is UFOs and extraterrestrials, or whatever you call them. And our place in this world, and maybe our claim to this planet, as well as our responsibilities to this planet. Because if you want to say, oh, well, this is a mess, let me take me somewhere else, you're also saying, well, I'm not going to bother to clean it up. I might have had a hand in messing it up, but don't ask me to clean it up, thank you very much. You see, I think there are subtleties and sinister elements in these seemingly surface issues that, in particular in UFO research, we should alert people to. They may be giving up their birthright just a little too easily, and it may come to haunt them at some future time. Who knows?
Well, thank you very much all. I think we might leave it there.